already spent a whole entire meeting working out, you know, however many hours working out the first one.
So we have two suggestions that you should just go back to the council at this point. Kathy, did you want to start?
May I offer another alternative for you? This committee could go to the planning board with what you've agreed and disagreed about, and actually the planning board meeting would be an opportunity for the public to speak as well before you actually feel the need to go to council. I mean, you could do that too.
Well, except that you know, and I know what the vote on the planning board is.
But at least you would have some public input.
Well, sure, we've already
We're not going to take two
I appreciate the suggestion, but we already know what the vote is on the planning board. I think we have plenty of public input when this was first suggested. I mean, I was certainly at that meeting, and there were a lot of pro-Measure A speakers at that meeting, and I think, you know, why should we haul the public out again to say the same thing? And it's always the same people, and they always say the same thing. So I think the point of this is the planning board apparently has a problem in being able to agree that the limitations of the first agreed upon format is too limiting for them. And I think that's the problem, as I am hearing it, that it's too limiting. And I don't know, I don't quite understand, you see, why it would take 3 hours when I think you can cover, you know, I just don't understand what you're going to do for 3 hours.
I know you have to go. You're
Yes.
getting back to talking about substance. I think the length of time of these meetings are relatively similar to each other. I think it's something you could work through. However, I hear two of you saying you feel like you've come to an impasse, you're not willing to work on it further. How about the other four of you? Rebecca?
Well, I would just say that I guess I would characterize it a little bit different, that we're not back to square one, that we still have the same number one with a possible addition to that the planning board recommended, and that we still have public input, and we still are suggesting a certain kind of panel. We have a disagreement about the structure of how that, I guess we weren't calling it a panel, but the presenters. And I don't think, I'm not sure, no matter how long we sit here, I agree with Kat that we're going to come to agreement on that. And
I could make a third alternative suggestion, and I don't know, Kathy, if you and I could do this, but that either with my help or Kathy's staff could do our best to summarize the two positions, what's similar and different between them. We would submit that to your two caucuses, who you could each write additional information in that packet of 3 parts with our attempt at an unbiased summary with your comments on it, could then be packaged up and sent either to the planning board or city council as appropriate. That would be another way.
Not until you get back to what this forum was supposed to be on, and that was the advantages and constraints of Measure A.
I would certainly put that in any report I would
And
write.
I think we're just interpreting it.
And separating out, I mean, you can touch lightly on, well, the housing is practically, but it seems like what you're getting at, we're supposed to, when we first met, it was supposed to be as it relates to Alameda. Now, you're only talking about new housing communities, where now you're focused on Naval Air Station. Excuse me, I have a problem with Alameda Point. And I think that we should get back to that.
We have 2 suggestions on the floor. I've put a third on the floor as to how to proceed from here. Suggestion 1 is to not attempt to meet again, go back to the council for direction. Suggestion 2 is to schedule another meeting. Suggestion 3 is that Kathy and I work together to write a report which each of the 2 caucuses could write additions to, that would then be forwarded to the planning board and city council for their consideration.
No, I think that...
Though, Diane, it is the facts that those are 3 suggestions.
Yes, I know that.
If you have a fourth,
it's
that would be
submitted
fine.
to it.
Excuse me?
It depends if they're in, when that is received, and then we put comments onto it, it has to be a final consensus before it goes to anybody. Not then it's going to be submitted to planning or council.
I'm going to suggest, and I'm the maker of this third suggestion, there is no way it would be useful for the 6 of you to get together and try and edit a report that I wrote. I would suggest that Kathy and I would write that report, And each of your two groups would write additions to it that would stand on their own. It would become a three-part report with as objective a situation as Kathy and I could create with your two sets of additions to it, and it would stand in that way. I think that there's no way that you guys could get together and write a report.
No, what I mean is I want to see the final thing before I sign off on it.
Of course.
You would see the final version that Kathy and I had written. You and your two colleagues would write additions to it. The other three would write additions as well. It would stand at that. You would not have the right to second guess what the three planning board members had written, nor would they have the right to second guess what you had
Until I
written.
have it in my hot hand.
For clarification, when we were talking about the length of time, is it clear to the others that speakers are 50-50? So, I mean.
I think both
No,
groups,
we understand that.
we understood, actually, both, you know,
understand
this is very interesting, both groups have said, you've said an hour and a half panel, this group has said 90 minutes. Last time I checked 90 minutes, we're an hour and a half. So these are very similar proposals to each other. They both have a 2A that has about 90 minutes of presenters in it. I keep thinking these are very similar, but I'm hearing they're not.
They
And
aren't in Alameda. But anyway, I feel like we've made a lot of effort here, the planning board, to kind of come to compromise and to say, okay, if you don't like it broken out, we'll try to put it together. That we really are very, very, very close. And so it's a puzzle to me that we can't get there, which makes me think that maybe we can't get there. You know, at a certain point you just say, okay, you know, we tried, and there must not be a common desire to have consensus, and then go to your proposal, which is to, you know, agree to
so
disagree.
you believe that, you're now saying maybe the best thing to do is to agree with Pat and Diane to go back to the city council and say, we have been unable to achieve this goal.
I'd like to hear the others, but that's kind of where I'm leaning right now, but I really want to hear
Rebecca?
everybody out. I'm willing to go, I agree to go with your proposal, and I.
My number 3 to write a report.
Isn't that this one?
No, Pat's proposal.
I'm with your proposal.
You're with
And
my,
I-
also,
yeah.
you're not with
No,
go
I'm
back to the
sorry.
city council. You would
No,
like
but wait.
Kathy and me to write a report, your two caucuses will each add to it.
Yes, it can go through the planning board, but I think ultimately it's going to end up with the city council, so.
I would suggest, and I don't understand procedure here, but given what I hear about the council and planning board, I would say that Kathy and I would take the 3-part report and present it simultaneously in writing to the council and board. And I'd then defer to Kathy as to how it gets agendized. But I think both bodies need to see it essentially simultaneously.
Now, perhaps what we would do is take it to the planning board for recommendation and not a final decision, because that's typically what the route that projects and other matters take when they go to the planning board and a recommendation to the city.
But with the clear understanding that it'll go straight to council, that it's not
Yeah,
by any
or it
means
could be just an
decision.
informational item, because I know Pat's.
Okay, so I hear two folks saying, let's have, I guess it's sort of the same that we're not going to meet again, but before we just go back to the council and say we weren't able to move forward, that there be at least a report written as objectively as possible by staff and consultants, followed by any additions that your two groups want to make to it, a 3-part report then that gets submitted simultaneously to planning board and council. And what Kathy's saying is it would then, as most matters, we first go to the planning board for review and comment, and then send directly to the council for next steps. Diane, Pat, Barbara?
Well, I don't think there's any point in this group meeting again, as was said before. We had an agreement out of the first meeting, then we agreed to do it in this meeting, and the 3 planning board members are, quote, revisiting, unquote, which means they're not keeping their agreements. And once you start dealing with those kind of people, then there's no point in continuing.
Okay. How does that, I'm not sure what that means in terms of the suggestion.
That means I support Pat's original thing that we get it to council. If you want to, I mean, staff's going to write up a report anyway,
Okay.
and we can write up a report, because we'll write one up anyway.
Well, essentially, your third suggestion is just an expansion on my saying we're going
That's
back
right.
to city council.
Yeah, and I guess that's another way to say it, that we're alerting you that staff will write a report, and as a courtesy to you, we'll get you that report in advance of our sending it in so that you can add anything you can write your own report with your comments on it
Absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely.
So I think that's how we'll leave it,
Maybe we're at an
that
impasse.
we're going to go back to the council, and obviously the planning board also alert them of what's happening. Staff's gonna write a report explaining what happened at these two meetings. I'll say part of what I'm gonna help to write is gonna say, I don't think you're that far apart. That's gonna be in my report, whether you want me to say you're close or not, I'm gonna say that. And then you all can take whatever additional measures you see fit before that goes to the planning board and council.
Well, I just would like to make a closing comment that there is an awful lot of rhetoric thrown around all the time about this being a very contentious issue. And it's disturbing because we all live in Alameda, we all want the best thing for the community. And, because there is a disagreement, doesn't mean that anybody is a bad person, but it means there is a disagreement. And because I disagree with you, doesn't mean that that gives anybody the right, me to you or you to me, to say that we're stubborn or contentious because we simply don't agree. So those little slide comments, really, it just doesn't hold any place in this. If you have something to say, you need to stand up and say it. And, I don't have a problem standing up and saying what I mean. And what I mean is that this group could not reach an agreement because there's too many other political agendas going on, and that's it, pure and simple. And if the city council doesn't understand that, they certainly will understand it after I write my report, because that's exactly what's going on. This was a simple task that could have been taken care of very simply. But unfortunately, it's overwrought with these other messages going on. So that's all I have to say. I appreciate your time, Kathy and David, and everybody on the committee. And I'm glad to say that I think that unfortunately we couldn't reach an agreement because that's why it was contentious in the first place.
Any other final comments before we break? Thank you all for your time. It's been a pleasure working with you.